Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. It's Brendan Johnson, or as you may know me as Brendan the Therapist. I'm joined today by Bea Cleveland, who specializes in sex therapy, trauma work, as well as trying to conceive. Thank you, Bea, for joining me.
Oh, thank you. The honor is I'm just thrilled and delighted to be here. I really am.
So, Bea, can you tell us more about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a LSW. I work for an amazing practice called Nurture Therapy based in Chicago. And we are a group of women that serve and support women and birthing individuals as well as their partners. So what I specifically do is I work with people who are trying to conceive, who are trying to have a family. And what that might look like is they might be at a hospital, like let's say University of Chicago in their ART department, and they ask for additional support and they find us. So what I specifically do with those couples is we work through grief loss. We work on relationship. I do this with individuals as well as with couples. In addition to that, I also work with individuals and couples with all of the challenges and stressors and context that we like to delve into within therapy. And then I also do sex and intimacy therapy as well.
Which is the big topic here and what we'll primarily be discussing. How is intimacy impacted during infertility?
Well, how is it not, right? Intimacy is our bond, right, with people. We're humans. We love people. That's what we got out of this pandemic, right? That's the silver lining of this pandemic experience. So when we're looking at a couple, right, who are facing challenges with trying to conceive, we're really looking at people who are going through active grief. Right? One of the things that I like to, or one of the exercises that I like to do with a couple, or even with individuals that I see, is let's give oxygen to the grief, to the disappointment, to the feelings, right? Which are weighty, of not being able to conceive your baby on a Tahitian island, right? Or on like a major romantic vacation where it's tropical and it's beautiful and you're really connected to your partner and the stars are aligned. There is so much grief that goes into the discovery of this is going to be a challenge, right? This may not look like the dream. This may not look like the fantasy. This may not be the reality for us as a couple. And so working, right, with a couple and an individual to just explore, to give oxygen. I often say, let's resuscitate that feeling, right? What's in there, right? But to really use a gentle, compassionate, and of course, trauma-focused lens to really look at what are all of the feels, right? What are you feeling? What does that landscape look like?
That is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And most of the times when we deal with couples who are infertile, during a denial stage, there becomes this topic of forced sex.
Absolutely.
Where you're trying to just go back to back to try to get the egg, which in general causes stress.
How could it not?
Do you believe that this, and for lack of a better word, forced sex or timed sex can be damaging to couples?
It absolutely can be, right? Anytime that we put parameters of you must under these circumstances, right? That's not very romantic, right? That's kind of a fantasy buzzkill, right? Yeah. Now we've put on the pressure and all of the feelings that we just discussed about infertility, right? We've added the grief loss. We've added, as to your point, maybe one partner has a little bit of a longer process to recognizing this is where we are. This is the realities, right? Sometimes that can look like denial. Sometimes that can look like grief, right? Sometimes that can look like anger and show up as just frustration with the world, right? So we've got all of these dynamics, all of these contexts at play. And now, right, the MD that you're working with has said, okay, right, we're going to start you on this process, right? And let's really think about that process of timed intercourse, right? That's just not that 24, 36, 40-hour window. That's the entire process. That's that first initial appointment, right? That's the subsequent appointments. That's the tracking of if you are going to be the birthing individual or the woman, let's look at your ovaries. How are your ovaries reacting, right? How are they, evolving with the addition of the Ovidrel, right? How does that feel, right? How do you feel about taking an injection? A lot of people don't like shots, myself included. I will do anything to get out of, getting anywhere near a needle, right? Blood test shots, no way, not for me. So now we've added all of these elements, right? And then we're supposed to have this romantic, fun, exciting, fantastic sexual experience, right? That's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure.
It's not there anymore.
Yeah, no. So, one of the things that I like to do is talk to people, right? Let's carry the weight of, we wish we were in Hawaii, but unfortunately we're not in Hawaii, right? we're in the confines of a medicalized timed cycle, right? So let's have the sex when we're supposed to have the sex, right? And honor that is what we're doing. We're trying to conceive, right? Let's talk about all of the feels, right? The positives, the negatives, and the neutrals, right? To which this entire landscape really comprises of. But then let's also come together. Let's try to have, some areas of romance, right? Let's try to make this as warm, as exciting, trying to make it, as pleasurable as possible, but under the actual understanding, right? And the delineation that this is a time cycle. And we can have the fun, the fantasy, the intriguing, the romantic sex outside of this time. But right now, in this landscape, this is what this looks like.
Exactly. And how long have you seen it, in your experience, how long have you seen couples take to get back to the romantic side of things?
Well, it really depends on, like any, form of treatment, right? We are helpers, we're healers, we're here to scaffold the space for the client, right? And we see the client for an hour once a week, maybe 2 hours twice a week, right? There's a lot of time outside of our Zoom, if you're just still doing the Zoom sessions like I am, or even in office, right? There's all this time that we really need to honor between the couple and the individual. So how long does it take for couples to really start to come back to each other, start to find each other? That could be after one session, right? That could be after 20 sessions. It really depends on the couple, where they're at, how they've been affected by this process, and what's going on, right? Because let's also add the medicalized component to infertility treatments, right? Hormones do not come and go into our system, right? There are effects of those treatments, right? There can actually be reasons why we are on additional hormone treatment, maybe our thyroid, right?
True.
And all of those aspects can be affecting.
How do you help couples revive their sex life?
Absolutely. Well, I think so. One thing is that we've got to normalize. And again, this goes back to our ethos, right? That that we as social workers, we're here to normalize behavior. We're here to normalize thinking. And so I'm here to specifically normalize when I'm working with couples within, my intimacy and my sex practices, normalize what you want. What is your relationship goal? Because your relationship goal is not going to look like your best friend's relationship goals, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is a little bit different. So let's define that. And part of sex therapy that I really love and that I really cherish the opportunity to work with, specifically with women and with vulva owners, is let's talk about what you like. So many women and so many female identifying individuals, right, are typecasted or have cultural contexts to which they have to navigate, right? And a lot of times sex can become a very weighty subject within that lens. So having the space to actually talk about what are the things that you like, right? What do you not like, right? What is the turn off? What is a turn off, right? All of these aspects that are going to really, really affect the way in which you communicate your sexual practices and the way that you engage with your partner.
That is awesome. Awesome information.
Well, it's, this is just, it's really exciting. I love doing this work. I really do.
Another challenging part is, how do you help someone recover from a low libido?
So what is a low libido, right? So what we're talking about is low sexual desire, libido, desire, right? So when I have a couple, right, that's talking about libido, there's a lot of weight to that word, right? So what I want to do is I want to just talk about our sexual response system, the way in which we organize, we see ourselves, right? We experience intimacy and those practices. With regards to desire, right? When we're thinking about our partner, right, there are all of these contexts for us to get to a place where we can start to think about having sex. Now, there's also the physical aspects of desire, right, which we can get into. But I think actually the most important, the most impactful, really, are the environmentals, right? So for a lot of people who have really, really busy lives, right, what does desire look like in the context of you having a very busy, busy life? If you're going through ART, right, let's add on that additional layer. What's the context of you having an incredibly busy life, but then also, right, you're trying to get pregnant, you're trying to establish and plan for a pregnancy and a family building.
That is true. Because at that point, you're so consumed by your daily life that you're not. Sex is the last thing on your mind.
Absolutely. So there's this concept called sexual response desire, right? And it's, I believe, Kinsey Institute has a lot of data that has actually we've been able to formulate, right, the percentages of what goes into actually having a long-term, really healthy, dynamic, satisfying sexual relationship in partnerships. And what they found is that friendship, trust, right, having that secure base. Sue Johnson talks about, right, that attachment.
Yes.
I know that in times of struggle, in times of stress, in times where I'm just not feeling, right, anchored, present myself, my partner will be there for me, right? And what could be more intimate than knowing your partner is going to be there for you in those periods?
Nothing more.
Right? Well, and then couples that can have and prioritize their sex lives. That's the secondary component to having really satisfying long-term sex. So what does that look like, right? Because we also talk about the time, going back to timed intercourse cycles, right? We can add in, they are there and they're stressful, and they're, for a lot of couples, they really aren't that fun. right? Because there is the pressure and there's also the reduction of parts, right? You're
Sure.
providing the sperm, you're providing the uterus, right? And it becomes very medicalized. And oftentimes, right, when we're feeling our feels about ART and, IUI, right, we can then turn into that sort of that medicalized sort of ethos, right? We have an agenda, right? We have a specific goal in mind. All of that does not necessarily mean that we're having the greatest connection with our partner, right? We're not talking about fantasy, right? We're talking about doing the job, getting it done, and making sure that, right, we have the potential for a pregnancy.
Oh, that's good information.
Yeah. So what can we do, right? Like what can we do to help support these couples? And I think it just goes back to really fostering that really incredible alliance as a therapist and with the people that we're working with, right? Being able to really hold that space, normalize it, right? And really be able to talk about those deeply held emotions and what they are going through.
Yes. Now, one question. You touched on it already,
Mhm.
but do you believe our sex drive is due to the way we see ourselves or the way we see our partners?
So I think it's a little bit of both, right? And I really, again, I want to be humanistic, right? Because we come from so many different experiences, so many different cultures, and so many different concepts of what it means to be sexual, right? That, whoa, that's some weight right there, right? How are we sexual, right? That is a weighty subject. So with regards to intimacy, there is a wonderful, wonderful sex therapist. Her name is Renelle Nelson, and I want to give her a shout out because she talks about intimacy as being into me, you see. Into me, you see, right? So when we're it's totally right. And so as we're talking to our couple clients, right, we're talking about going back to Sue Johnson and emotionally focused, just grounding connective communication patterns, right, so that we can explore our intimacy practices. But how do we even navigate those conversations? It goes back into me, right? Me as the individual, knowing, right, what feels good, what's a turn on, right? How do I feel safe to have sex, right? Let's look at our culture. We've got a lot of trauma within American culture, and it's within the ART world, right? We've got some trauma there too. So if we're looking at the statistics of sexualized based trauma, and now we're adding ART into the mix, right? We've got to have that lens too. Consent can be really romantic and erotic, or at least I think so. Yeah.
Or it could be very textbook.
Well, it doesn't have to be, right? You don't have to say, okay, do I have your permission to do the following, right? But you can say, to your partner, does this feel good? What would you like tonight? Or what would you like in this moment? May I touch you in this way, right? Would you like to touch me in this way, right? Do I have your permission to do the following, right? Where I've seen something on, and I'll do another plug, I've seen something on, oh my gosh, yes. How do you feel about that? Can we try it out? Consent can look like a lot of different, conversations, right? And we can actually anchor that using our trauma-informed lens, right? Of enabling some empowerment, some autonomy, right? Into actually making these decisions about what we're doing and what we're engaging in. And it can be fun and it can be playful.
Bea, that's like the perfect segue into my next question.
Okay, all right.
Which is, how do you build intimacy outside of sex?
I love this. This is great, right? Because we often think intimacy, our brains go one way, right?
Yep.
But let's do a little myth busting, right? And I love to myth bust in my sessions. Intimacy is not just sex. And you know, the umbrella term for sex, right? It's not just sex. Intimacy can be emotional intimacy, it can be intellectual intimacy, right? It can be experiential intimacy. And intimacy is not just between two partners. It's not just between two sexual partners or two romantic partners, right? We can be intimate, we can have formal, deep, really connective bonds with people in all areas of our life, right? So right now, we're in an intimate conversation, right? We're talking about things that we're deeply passionate about, working, supporting people, right? We also get to kind of nerd out on these subjects that we love to dive deep into. That's a form of intimacy, this exchange that we're having, right? We can also be intimate with our families. We can be intimate with our friends, with our family of choice, right? With our best friends, right? We can also, and I've had this conversation with a lot of my clients right now because of COVID, right? Because we have had to live a very amended version of ourselves, right? We can go out to dinner, and which is for some of us, right? An amazing experience, right? Someone gets to make, cook, prepare, and clean up, right? And we don't have to do it. We also get dressed up and experience something new and really fun and dynamic, right? Isn't that intimacy?
It is.
Yeah.
So it's all about redefining our common view of intimacy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right?
That is awesome. I was trying to debate of how to ask this one. How does one improve their performance in order to better help their partners?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's look at that actual like language again, right? Performance. So much, and specifically in Western identifying, areas. This is a huge issue with younger people, is this idea of performance, right?
Yes.
Performance, that sounds theatrical, right? That sounds rehearsed. It sounds like there's some prep work that goes in, and the prep work I'm talking about, right, is what do I look like, right? What am I wearing? Like how am I relating to this person? Performance, right, can be very sort of not superficial, but very sort of thin in terms of engaging in a really dynamic experience, right? So in terms of performance, I don't actually like to talk about that because it really underscores, all of our sexual education, mostly which has been learned from, pornography, from Hollywood, from what we see on our phones, right? Absolutely. It's the expectations of, right? Like as a man, I'm supposed to be strong and overpowering and, and really just go for it. Right. And as a woman, I'm supposed to, be maybe a little bit submissive or look a certain way or behave a certain way or say certain things. Right. There are all these contexts at play. So in terms of, this sense of performance, let's walk away from that. Let's look at quality, right? Quality time. What feels good to us, right? As a couple, what feels good to us as individuals? Going back to that into me, right? Understanding what is it that we want from this? And that may not be penetrative sex, right? That may look more like massage. It may look like more like touch based.
That is true. That is a great way to define it. And it also helps take the pressure off um, the sexual nature of it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
too much pressure also ruins, quote unquote, performance.
Completely, because performance, and I forgot to say this because, we're having a conversation here, and what I get into these like these tunnels, but performance, right, is also anchored into goal-based behavior, right? So I have to, go down the list, right? We've got to have some foreplay. Well, in my mind, this is what foreplay looks like. Check. Right now we've got to, go to the bedroom. Check. Now we have to have this Hollywood moment. Check. Now we have to have this, Pornhub moment. Check. Wow. Right. This is what sex should be, but I'm not actually enjoying it.
And we haven't even talked about timing and
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, right, it comes back to what as a couple, what as an individual feels really good, feels really thoughtful, feels gentle, feels compassionate, feels connective.
so often in therapy, I tell couples that they have the ability to create,
Mm,
and more so create their own marriage, create their own um, thoughts, their own behaviors, what they're going to do, and how they identify as a couple, regardless of what other people think.
yeah,
In this case, you have given me the thought that I never thought of, was create the own layers of your sex life.
absolutely. And let's add. So what I like to do is everything for me comes back down to food because I love food, right? I love trying new restaurants. I love eating different, all the foods, right? I love it. So one of the topics that I talk to couples about is their sexual scripture, right? Is
Right.
the stories that they've been told, the ethos they must carry, right? All of the various different contexts that they have within their sexual scriptures, right? And what I do is once we've processed that, right? We then start to talk about their sexual menu. And I think for, especially for Valentine's Day, how fun is this, right?
Yeah.
As a couple, start to talk about, right? If you two were going to co-author a sexual menu, right? What would that look like, right? Because your filet mignon might not be my filet mignon, right? I might be more interested in the vegetarian entree. I might be more interested in just having sides, right?
True. That is
So,
awesome to look at.
yeah.
And it's
So,
not a human.
completely. And with that, right, when we're authoring this sexual menu, this gives us this chance to be a little bit experimental, right? We get to kind of try on various different hats, right? Roles. We get to try maybe different toys or different things, right? That we've been kind of fantasizing or maybe even curious about, right? So that could be going to a sex store or going online, right, to see what's available. It could be, using like the Esther Perel board game or the John Gottman cards, right? It could be just adding some of these elements. Maybe, going back to the restaurant, because for a lot of us, right, that's all that we can do right now. We're such busy individuals, right? Maybe it's going to a different type of restaurant, eating a different type of food, right? And really sitting and being mindful about that full sensory experience, right? And
Yes,
then being able to reflect on that and saying, okay, how can we bring this, right, to our sexual menu?
that is awesome. I like that.
Yeah, it's really fun. That's one of the exercises that I really do love to work with because it really gives a couple or an individual agency, right? And not every menu, your Monday, at 12 noon menu is not going to look like your Friday evening or your Saturday menu, right? It's all going to be a little bit different.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bea,
Mm-hmm.
at what point should a couple come see you?
That's a great question, right? So I think that's a question that every therapist, right, is asked. And I think it's important that we really normalize the wide spectrum of challenges, of curiosities, of the desire to work on yourself, right? You do not have to come and see a sex therapist if you are having, just a specific issue, right? You are more than welcome, of course, to come and seek a sex therapist out if you're, say, having challenges maintaining an erection, or having a tight pelvic floor, right, post birth, or you have vaginismus, or right, you really don't like timed intercourse, right? You can come to us for that specific challenge, right? But you can also just come to us as a therapist, right? To talk about all the things, all of the worthy aspects of your life, right? That we can spend some attention and time with. And sex is one of those.
That is awesome to know. So, Bea, I thank you for joining me. Those are all the questions I have for this time around. Assuming, well, not even an assumption. We will do this again sometime in the future.
That would be fantastic. This has been so much fun, Brandon. I thank you again for having me. I really appreciated it.
No problem. I thank you. And then can you tell everyone how to reach out and how to find you, just in case they have any more follow-up questions?
Absolutely. So I work for Nurture Therapy out of Chicago, Illinois. Yeah, your hometown, right? We were just talking about this, right? Chicago is just this great city. So you can contact me via Google, right? Nurture Therapy. My email is bea@nurturetherapy.com. And you can email me direct. If you go onto our website, we have our list of amazing, fantastic, cannot, give them enough praise clinicians that I am so humble and so thankful to work with. Maybe someone on that page strikes your fancy. I'm not the only individual that does sex therapy and intimacy practices, but go onto our website or email me directly.
That is great.
Yeah.
So again, I want to thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you.
And until next time, I'm excited to ask you more.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to answer. And, all of these questions, right, really could be in depth, hour long sessions. So thank you again for having me. No
problem. And guys, remember to visit me on Instagram at Brandon.therapist, YouTube at Brandon.therapist, and check the website for more information. Till then, peace, love, and God bless.